Friends, we have news, more news on Beau Demayo. That's sweet, sweet Beau Demayo news. People ask me all the time, Amanda, more news on Beau Demayo? What's going on? Well, let me tell you, we got something going on. People have been asking, is Beau Demayo coming back for season 2? Did he sign back on with Marvel? Multiple people have asked me about this, especially in like recent weeks, especially with the show being so successful, and I have an answer for you. Well, Beau Demayo has an answer for you. I'm not going to answer the question for him. He answered it for himself on Twitter, where he has been very active lately, and I also want to talk about a couple other things he mentioned on there recently that I just thought were interesting. But before we talk about those things, let's talk about the main thing, which is Beau Demayo back? Season 2. Did Marvel call him and say, this show's amazing, you better get back in here, Beau? And he said, I will, because I love the X-Men. No, that is a fantasy that we all have in our minds, but it has not happened yet. Instead, what Beau did say is that for season 2, a lot of people have been asking him about it, but he can't actually speak to it because what he said is, I wrote a lot of season 2, but I'm not going to be involved as a showrunner. That means that they could take his scripts and do whatever they want. They could take his stories that he gave them and do whatever they want. He's not going to be involved in rewrites. He's not going to be involved in cast recordings and sort of notes. He's not going to be involved in any other aspect of the show, which there's a lot that he was involved in as a showrunner. Basically, a lot of people are saying, and that were responding to him even on Twitter, were saying that's crazy because, you know, when a producer, when someone that is that involved in the show leaves, it usually changes the tone of the show. But Beau did say that he's optimistic about season 2. He did write a lot of season 2, so if they decide to continue with kind of the direction that he had intended and that his writing is giving them, then there is a good chance that season 2 will still be really good. It doesn't mean that season 2 is going to be bad because Beau Demayo is not involved. A lot of other people were involved in this show, and a lot of those people I'm sure will still be around. We'll have to wait and see. I also know he was involved in season 3, and if you don't know, I have previous videos that I did on Beau Demayo. You can check them out. I do talk about, I think, some of these things. I think I mentioned this earlier on, but I don't feel like, I mean, you know, a lot of my videos have a lot of views, but I still feel like there's a lot of people that are not aware of that news, because people still ask me like there were people at the beginning that thought Beau Demayo just wrote like the first episode or something. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of confusion on this point. So I do talk about more stuff in regards to that if you want to hear about it, but just to re-clarify, Beau Demayo, when he was working with Marvel on X-Men 97, he did completely season 1. He wrote a lot of season 2 before they went their separate ways, or they let him go, or whatever happened. There's kind of two reports we kind of have on that one. Hollywood Reporter and then Brad Winderbaum, who's a producer on the show, who said he would describe it as a parting of ways. Hollywood Reporter saying that he got fired. But when it comes to season 3, what we know is that Beau Demayo was in the process. He was in the process of planning out season 3. So they may even have like a rough idea of season 3 if they want to continue with Beau Demayo's direction. I think it would be smart considering how successful it's been, but I'm not going to write the show off if Beau Demayo's not involved. I don't know if that's necessary. I need them to show me that that's necessary. You know what I mean? They made a great season of this show. They made a great show with X-Men 97, and so I want to have faith that this can continue. But there were a couple other things that Beau clarified that I thought were super interesting, so I wanted to talk to you about some of those. Now, the interesting thing with Beau is that he came back in episode 5, for those that don't know that part of his history. He came back with a whole response, kind of a whole explanation of what his pitch was like for X-Men 97, kind of centered around the idea of episode 5 and then what we could expect, what we maybe had in store. And he talked about his inspiration in the real world and also his love of the X-Men. I did a little response to that post. You can find that post as well online, but I mostly talked about in my video a little bit about what he said, but also just about my own personal response to that, because it really touched me. So that video you can check out, but it's like a personal video, so if you're interested in me and what that meant to me, it's great, and I do go into it a little bit. But he's been active since then, since episode 5, and he came back and he kind of gave us his little mini manifesto. And he has been on Twitter or X or whatever, like crazy, just clarifying everything that people have questions about. He confirmed that Madeline Pryor was dead. I was very sad about that confirmation, as you know, as a Madeline Pryor fan. But he's been very active, which I think has been really good because, I mean, obviously we all want to talk to him about X-Men because it's super cool. Like, if I see Beau Demayo at a convention and I have an opportunity to ask him questions, am I going to? Yeah, because this is very exciting to discuss with someone who is so heavily involved. But on the other side of things, it is kind of weird because then it does cut off for people some theories. Because if you ask him and then he responds to you, it's like people are taking that as sacrosanct. But the other thing is that he's only involved in season 1 in this capacity. So season 2, like I said, they could take his stuff and throw it away. So also when there's stuff that he's confirming or denying based on obviously season 1, it could also have an impact on season 2. So that's also why when writers are that active, I'm like, this is so amazing. But on the other side of it, I'm like, there's going to be things that people now are going to take your word as gospel. And in some ways, it's going to mess with people a bit. Like, I don't know, not in a bad way. Just more like, if I have a theory and Beau Demayo said that's definitely not happening, but then in later seasons, another writer changes their mind and decides to bring that back, and now that is happening. You know what I mean? It just contradicts potentially future things that could happen with the show. But that's also why when I read what a writer says, I keep in mind, you know, this is superheroes. This is Marvel. It is kind of the idea of you have the toys, you play with them, you put them back on the shelf as a writer. So nothing is really for sure. Also, you know, retcons can always happen. Good and bad. So when it comes to what he has said recently that I wanted to talk about, that I just thought was interesting, and I had an idea, so I thought boom, lightning bulb. I thought I would share my idea. So my idea is, one of the things that Beau commented on is that someone asked on Twitter, a user named Zero Won't Miss said, "Where is Deadpool at?" And Beau responded saying, "Yeah, he was off limits." And I think this is a theory that I've been saying the whole time. I think X-Men 97 is going to be tied into the MCU. And I think the fact that Deadpool was off limits is a sign that Marvel is doing something else in the MCU, and that even maybe X-Men 97 might be pulled into it through Wolverine and Deadpool. Now, this is kind of a crazy theory. Like, this, I don't know if this one's going to happen, but I just think it would be cool, and I would love for X-Men 97 to be in the MCU, so it's kind of more just like a dream fantasy theory. But it could mean something, or it could mean nothing. Apparently, there's been a lot of careful choices that Marvel seems to be making with Deadpool lately, maybe because of the film that's coming out. So it could just be them being careful about it, being weird about it. Also, Deadpool is kind of, you know, an adult character, so it could have to do with that. They want to keep the show open for, like, being family friendly, because Deadpool's not usually the most family friendly. However, I don't know. You could write him in a way that was, and I think it would still be good. So I don't know if that's it. But yeah, he commented on that, and then there was another thing where people actually asked for clarification on where the Avengers were, and someone, I want to get this person's name right because I'm like so impressive. The user Angelo Boccato, or _Bach, this user said that they thought that the Avengers could be busy with Operation Galactic Storm, which is why they weren't as present in X-Men 97. It would also make sense with Wanda being off-world. For those of you that don't know, Operation Galactic Storm is the Kree fighting the Shi'ar in space. It is a thing that happened in the comics, and Beau confirmed and said, yes, indeed, some of the Avengers are indeed off-world dealing with that conflict. Well done. Now, granted, this wasn't established, but there are little hints that point towards that, which is clearly what this person was picking out and saying, is that what it means, or is this just convenient, you know? So I don't know if that will take us somewhere, but I just thought that was really cool, especially because a lot of people have been asking as well me that question. So this was a really interesting one to answer, and I do think that that's cool, that that was, you know, the intention for the Avengers here. So yeah, if you have questions, burning questions, you can go to Twitter. You can go to X. You can @ Beau Demayo about it. You can ask questions, and maybe, you know, he'll answer you. He's being very active, and I do love to see it. I think it is really cool that he's just engaging with so many fans, and is just really, I think, sticking to the guns creatively in terms of, like, what he has made. So I think that's... It's nice to see a writer like that who's so excited to engage and who clearly has a strong passion for the X-Men. However, now we gotta go in maybe a different direction. Who knows what will happen? Let me know what you are thinking about for season 2. What theories do you have? What are you expecting? What are you nervous about? What are you excited about? Let me know all those things down in the comments below. I'm going to be doing a full season 1 X-Men 97 review, so that'll be coming out soon, and we will be talking more X-Men soon as well in terms of the comics, because I got things to talk about, friends. It's a good time to be an X-Men fan. It's a good time to be an X-Men fan. I'll see you next time, but until then, stay nerdy.